Welcome to A Drink of Wisdom with Jay Wise and Nathan Drinkard. I'm your host, Cody Ward. Thanks for spending some of your time with us tonight. As a reminder to our listeners, besides being on all your favorite podcast platforms, The Drink of Wisdom is also on YouTube, with each show segment available. Head on over, and if you like what you hear, we'd appreciate you hitting the subscribe button. What's going on, guys?
What's going on, everybody? Man, packed show today, so it's a good thing we're all here. We got the beard, we got the drink, and we got the wisdom as well. Let's do it.
Let's talk some sports, baby. Hey, I want to give a quick shout out to my boy DNA Tooth. As you can see, I got this lovely sweater from him. All right, he do it for the culture, as you can see. And I slapped that link down in the description box, and we'll go from there. Over to you, Cody.
Awesome. All right, y'all, in episode 61, we have a 2010s NFL All-Decade team, and we begin our draft coverage with the AFC and NFC East. Well, let's go ahead and begin tonight with the NBA. The season is still on hold right now amid the COVID-19 outbreak. The latest from them is no decision will be made before May 1st via Adam Silver. So let's go ahead and take an opportunity to look at the All-NBA teams if the season were to end today. These are obviously our personal lists, since the real ones aren't awarded till later on, to the end of the season, and let's hope that's not anytime soon. So, Drink, let's go ahead and start with you, man. Who's your first team All-NBA?
Okay. Before I get into this, I want to say there is no standard that the NBA has put for the All-NBA team as of now for this year. So it's just three guys spitting out who we think should be All-NBA first, second, and third team. So please try not to kill us if you don't agree with what we say. I did go with the format of two guards, two forwards, and one center, just like the normal mumbo jumbo. So with that said, let me kick it off. For my first guard, I went with James Harden of the Houston Rockets. I would like to remind people of this. At one point in this season, James Harden looked like he was going to average 50 points a game. If you look in that first quarter and a half of the season, he was just completely on fire. Then it got rid of Clint Capella, and then everything else happened. But I will remind people, do not remember the James Harden that was there before the break that kind of teetered off a little bit. I'm going off, the totality of the body work. My second guard, the young Slovenian, Luka Doncic of the Denver Mavericks. Listen, this kid was fantastic. When we started talking about NBA teams making the playoffs, or championship level NBA teams, playoff level NBA teams, however you want to look at it, Dallas was a team that we was like, we got to see it to believe it. We knew Kristaps Porzingis was coming. We knew that they had Luka. This is only his second year, so we needed to see some proof before we gave him the pudding, per se. We got to see that proof. And remember, at one time, during that same time, Luka Doncic was an MVP candidate. He was the third guy behind the Greek Freak and behind LeBron James at one point. Then he got hurt. He kind of fell out of the conversation. And then, the rest is history. He came back, and they supplanted themselves into the playoff race. All right, moving on to the forwards. My first forward, I got the ageless one, LeBron James, in year 17. He's out here leading the NBA in assists. He's still one of the best players in the world at year 17. I don't think I need to go into why he's the first team on my first team. But the second guy I want to talk about is Giannis Antetokounmpo. We're going to call him the Greek Freak for the rest of this. No self-explanatory for him either. Let's be honest. These two gentlemen, they're both the leading candidates for the MVP conversation. So it's only right that they're both first-team forwards. They deserve it. Been playing outstanding ball. We'll see how if the season remains. If it don't remain, we'll see how the awards go. But those are my two forwards. And then for my center, I went with Nikola Jokic. Listen, all these good players, but tell me how many teams actually run their offense through the center. The Nuggets got to be one of the few. This guy, he's a stud. A little, could do better around the rim. He's a little soft around the rim for my liking, but he brings you so much with everything else. His vision, his playmaking. And listen, like I said, one of the few teams that actually run their offense through the center. So I went with Jokic. So just to give a quick run through, that was Harden, Doncic, James, Giannis, Jokic. That's my first team All-NBA. Over to you, Jay.
Yeah, for the most part, didn't deviate a whole lot. I think I'm with you on James Harden, and yeah, his start to the season was absolutely fantastic. He's tailed off a bit uh, after the Clint Capella trade, and Russell Westbrook, to his credit, has seen his play elevate. So, though, but it's hard for those guys to be at full 100% all, operating at all cylinders. So, but James Harden's a first teamer. I don't think any question about that. He's averaging 34 points a game, leading the league in scoring, leading the league in free throw makes, free throw attempts, and second in PER. LeBron, and I deviate a little bit from your traditional positional requirements. I just want to get that out there because I got LeBron James at the second guard. I've been told he's been playing point guard this season, so I'm gonna give him credit for that. I got him at the other guard position, and on this first team, he would be the point guard. You're absolutely right. He's leading the league in assists. He's giving you about 26, 8, and 11. Absolutely fantastic. Maintaining a high level of efficiency. He's seventh in PER. And the Lakers have been the best team wire to wire in the Western Conference. LeBron's a major, major reason for that. And then you get to the forwards. The Greek Freak absolutely deserves to be there. MVP candidate, likely would win the award if the season, the season, I guess if you look at it, is over today. So he'd have my vote today, and he's been nothing short of spectacular. He's third in points. He's third in rebounding. He's first in player efficiency rating. The Bucks have been the best team in the East, wire to wire, and they've only trailed off recently because of his injury. Otherwise, they'd still be miles ahead of the pack, and that's for the entire NBA. They maintain a good lead in the East. But yeah, Giannis is a no-brainer. Then we differ at the last forward and the center. I'm giving Kawhi Leonard a spot on this team. I think he's been fantastic this season. He's giving you 27 points a game, good efficiency, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. I'm not going to sneeze at that. The Clippers have been they're the second best team in the West. They took some time to get going. We know about the injury to Paul George, and I'm giving and how he hasn't been himself throughout the season consistently, and I'm giving Kawhi Leonard extra points for playing hurt. I think he's been playing through a knee injury this season. You've mentioned that on several occasions, and yeah, he's missed his share of time trying to manage that injury. But I'm giving him credit. He's been fantastic. 5th in player efficiency rating, maintaining his high level of play on both ends of the floor. So I got Kawhi on this team. And in my last spot, I know he don't like to play center, but he's playing it for this team. Anthony Davis. You talk about the effect LeBron James has had on the Lakers. Anthony Davis leads the Lakers in a multitude of categories in points, rebounds, steals, blocks, and shooting over 50% of the field. He's a great free throw shooter. He's 3rd in player efficiency rating. And then this is something you might not think about, but in terms of win shares, offensively and defensively, he's the only player in the NBA in the top 5 of both offensive and defensive win shares. So I think in this NBA today for this season, I think you would be very hard pressed to find a better lineup than what I've just laid out for you. James Harden, LeBron, Kawhi, the Greek Freak, and Anthony Davis.
Yep, I got pretty much what y'all have. Just have a little bit of a mismatch of both. I agree with Harden and Doncic for the 2 guards. Obviously, Harden 32 points per game. You do have that little tail off towards the end of the season, but man, it's hard to find another guard that's doing as much as he does with their team and leading the team like he does. And Doncic I like a lot. I mean, the Mavericks have started to slip a little bit as well. They're down to, I think, 7th in the West, so a little bit of a concern. But I think when Porzingis really gets going with that offense, they're going to take back off. And then I have LeBron and Giannis for my 2 forwards. No surprise there. I have LeBron in small forward just because that's what he plays. But you're right. I think that's crafty. He's pretty much is a guard this season. So I think putting him there is, it's amazing what he's doing and how he's evolved his game at this point in his career. And I do have AD for the center spot. I think his defense, to me, gives him a little bit of an edge over Jokic, but it's just slight. I think that, AD could easily win Defensive Player of the Year this year. So I think that that gives me just enough to put him in the 1 spot over Jokic, but it's close. It's close between the 2. So let's go ahead, go to second team. Drink, what you got?
All right, so my first guard for my second team, I'm going to go with Damian Lillard for the Portland Trail Blazers. Listen, I know the Trail Blazers has been a hot mess this year. I got it. I'm the first one to tell you that. Hot mess. But the one consistency that they have is Little has been playing in the All-Star level. I think at an All NBA level. He ended up getting hurt right before the All-Star break. That pretty much put the nail in the coffin for the Trailblazers as far as making a push for that 8th spot. Listen, I know they was making a push, but let's be serious here. If the NBA decides to go forward with the NBA season, if you ain't in right now, you're just not going to be in. They're not going to have time to run it for a couple of more games and let you go on the high street. We ain't got time for that. It is what it is. Opportunity is lost. My second guard, I'm going to go with Russell Westbrook. Jay mentioned it. I think the Clint Capella trade hurt Harden, but helped Westbrook. Because the one thing Westbrook is phenomenal, A1, MVP, Mr. Triple-Double, Hall of Fame, is space. If you give him space, he utilized that space about as good as anybody. When they got rid of Clint Capella, I'm sorry, I say got rid of like he was trash. When they traded Clint Capella, right? When they traded him and brought in Robert Covington in that trade, that opened up that lane for Russell Westbrook to do what he's doing now, which is going back to that MVP Russell Westbrook, going back to that triple-double. He's playing phenomenal ball right now. And if, some could say he's the better guard. I'm not in that. But if you want to say that, it's an argument to be made. Holla at your boy. My first boy is Anthony Davis. Hey, you heard what Jay said. Let's be real here. He laid it out the facts. The one thing he didn't say that I thought he was going to say was, whenever they start the awards, I think this is your defensive player of the year, Anthony Davis. It's some guys that can, probably make that claim, but when you look at what these guys have done for the Lakers, LeBron is the best player on that team. There's no doubt. But look, he can't get it done without the big hand that he gets of Anthony Davis. And Anthony Davis is the chief and commander when it comes to that defense. He runs the show. So I think that's your defense player of the year. And then keeping it on defense, my other forward would be one Kawhi Leonard. Listen, if it wasn't for the fact that he decides to do load management on his own, he would have been an MVP candidate. Because you can't overlook what he do for the Clippers and look where the Clippers are located within the infrastructure of the top teams in the NBA and don't think it ain't done by Kawhi Leonard. Paul George didn't miss half of the season. So don't give me he got Paul George. Yeah. So do the handicap sign. Listen, now when Paul George come to play, these are some bad boys. But Paul George been hurt. That's just all it is to it. And Jaden said it. That's why he's the X factor, because you just don't know what you're going to get from him. You don't even know if he's going to show up to the game. So Kawhi Leonard has definitely earned all NBA accolades, and that's why he's my second team for it. And then for my center, I'm going to go with Joel Embiid of the 76ers. Listen, let's take out the lack of leadership. Let's take out all the antics. All right, when we go player for player, stat for stat, this a bad boy. All right, if he was not so concerned with what happens outside the court, he would have been on my first team. But because he cuts a buck and he want to be on Twitter going, I would love to be in Miami. Look, that ain't it. All right. His lack of leadership really turns off guys like me and some other guys as far as what he does for the team. Now, what he does for the team, he's the best player on that team. Let's make no mistake. Bar none, Joel Embiid is the best player on the 76ers team, but he lacks a lot of those intangibles, as they call them, and that's why he's on my second team as a center. So with that said, my second team is Lillard, Westbrook, Davis, Leonard, and Embiid. Over to you, Jay.
Yeah, love the guard picks. I'm going to tell you, I was one of the objectives I had was when I made these teams was to reward winning, and I missed the mark on the second team because I began this with the thought that I would bump Lillard to the third team, but it's just tough because I'm looking at some other guards down below Lillard, and it's just hard to elevate those guys because Lillard's had a fantastic season. He's averaging career highs in scoring, field goal percentage, and he's averaging a career high in assists. So he's doing a great job out there. The supporting cast hasn't worked out. They've had injuries, with the Zach Collins of the world. And I swear, if I have to bring up Yusuf Nurkic one more time, I'm so sick of bringing this guy up. Just you talk about a handicap spot. He's the, handicap employee of the year. But hey, Lillard's been nothing short of fantastic. It is unfortunate that the Blazers have been a monumental disappointment in my mind. You look at the Western Conference, they got to be the biggest disappointment in the Western Conference. But individually, I think he's got to be on the second team at least. And then Russell Westbrook, you laid it out. The Capella trade, I'm going to say it absolutely benefited Westbrook. And then the benefit it gave to him that may lead maybe a second tier effect was that Westbrook's the improvement of Westbrook may have hurt Harden, secondary effect. But hey, at the forward spots, I'm gonna go back to y'all's first team. I got Luka Doncic down here. I understand, look, he's one of them guys that you guard forward. What does he do? Well, he does a whole lot. And for the Dallas Mavericks, who I don't think any of us saw them playing this well, I thought they'd be a year away from playoff contention. But the reason they're here is because of Luka Doncic. And, this is a guy that's sixth in points, fourth in assists, and he's fourth in player efficiency. I would have him on my first team. I'm just being a little bit tough on him because the Mavericks are down in the 7th spot, and some injuries, here and there. So little bit. I mean, I'm docking him for durability a little bit, but hey, still well deserved to be in this conversation. And had he not missed, so many games, much stronger argument of first team. But I got no problem that you guys have him on your first team. I got at the other forward spot, and this goes back to reward and winning. Pascal Siakam from Toronto. I don't think the advanced metrics are all that kind. I think he's about 50th in PER, 54th to be exact. But the Toronto Raptors, when we take into account what they've done this year, I think we all would expect a drop off in performance and winning, and they've been about on par with what they did last year with Kawhi Leonard. So, and we have to look at Pascal Siakam. Getting that big contract, and from my mind, he's earned every penny of it. He's been a bona fide first option. He was a starter in the All-Star game for the Eastern Conference. With all that in mind, I gotta have him on this team somewhere, and I'm putting him on the second team. I think it's well deserved. And then going back to Drink's first team, I got the Joker at the center position. The Denver Nuggets, they're third in the West, which that's something we got to take seriously because third in the West behind the Clippers and Lakers. So you're the best of the rest. We got to put some respect on it. It's tough to be higher than that. But the Jokers have another great year. He's giving you 20 points. He's averaging a double-double. And you talk about running your offense through a big guy. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And he's giving you a whole lot of assists. It's funny. One of the interesting things when I was going through this, I believe, and I could be wrong, but Jokic, I think on all the guys I've got all NBA, is the only guy who's played in every game for his team. He's played in all 65 games. And when you look at his body type, you look at his frame, it's a wonder because when you just look at him, you would say, man, this looked like a guy that might break down at some point. But you got to give him credit, durability, and he obviously is a high-end producer. So just to recap, Damian Lillard, Russell Westbrook at the guards, the forwards are Pascal Siakam and Luka Doncic, and the Joker is the center.
Nice. So I've got most of those guys that y'all just mentioned, either the first, second team, but I do have one y'all haven't, though, and I've got Chris Paul at my first guard spot. I think it's just simply amazing what he's been doing at Oklahoma City and how good they've been this year. You got to talk about a guy that got traded there, and then, he was kind of expecting to leave town, and then he didn't, and he just basically got dumped off in the middle of nowhere. He's got a bunch of just these random guys. The team kind of fell apart, and there was so many times that Chris Paul could have went, you know what, forget this, or just packed it in, mailed it in, and he's not. He's leading this team to a 40-24 record. They're fifth in the West, and they could be as high as third. They're in striking distance of up to third place. And when you look at the roster and what he's got to work with, it's nowhere near what the teams like the Clippers and Lakers have, among others. And I think that it's just amazing. I mean, Damian Lillard, from a pure stats perspective, has been better, no doubt. But Lillard's team is much worse than Chris Paul's team. And the fact that also Lillard has missed about 10, 12 games this year, you got to hold that against him a little bit, I guess. I hate to do it, but it is what it is. Chris Paul's been more available, and he's man, this is amazing. And then going down the rest of them, agree with Westbrook. I love what he's doing with his game, how much he's changed his game. A guy that a lot of people thought he would never be able to do that, and he is now. And then on top of that, go to your forward spots. I've got Leonard and Siakam as well. You guys mostly talked about it on there. And then I've got Jokic for my center. Did we lose a drink?
Looks like we did.
Okay.
We'll try adding them back, or do I need to do it?
You can.
I can do it. Give me a sec.
Yeah, 1 second, folks. Little technical difficulties. Try to run through our third teams real quick after this.
Let's see if we can get them back real quick.
There he is. Welcome back, Drink.
Go ahead, Drink. We just finished up our second team, so if you want to go ahead and get to the third team.
Oh, yeah, all right then. Let's do it.
We got a lot to get to tonight, so let's roll through these. We got a lot to get to tonight.
Hey, you ain't got to tell me twice, baby. Let's roll. Third team, all right? With my guard spots, when my first guard, I went with Chris Paul. Hey, you laid it out. Why Chris Paul should be on the All-NBA team. Listen, we know this. When OKC made that trade to send Westbrook to Houston and get Chris Paul, that was just a ploy. They want to get some picks. They want to get the money off, even though the money thing kind of even itself out. Chris Paul was supposed to go to Siberia. That's what it was. It wasn't supposed to be going to be no winners. It wasn't supposed to be going to a celebratory place. It was just supposed to go there and die. Then we thought, okay, cool. Listen, that what they're going to do is they're going to take him on. They're going to trade him and get some more picks on top of the picks they already got. That way they got a slew of picks, and they're just going to rebuild this thing, right? Chris Paul said, hold on, pump them brakes. I get a chance to be a leader again? Hold up, let me get some of this. Where you at, Gillis Alexander? So all this got mixed up. Steven Adams came back alive again, and now we talking about a playoff team, well-deserved. I love to see Chris Paul back in the mix. With my next guard, another young gun, second year in the NBA, him and Luka. We know what the relationship is between the two, and that's one Trae Young. Now, before you beat me up, yes, this is the only player that's probably on my roster that's on a straight clunker, just like straight. At least Damian Lillard got a name for himself, so that's a little different. Trae Young, second year, he's on the clunker. But look, here's the deal. My man got enough confidence to say that he's going to come out here and replace Steph Curry when it comes to one of the best shooters in the NBA history. I want to see that, but the boy got range. He got range. He can shoot it out the car, straight up out the sunroof, let it go, holler at your boy, game over. So I give him that, but it is a testimony to him and Luka. Hey, both of them was all-star game starters this year, right? So that's a testament. Give him some help. Maybe Atlanta could do something. Moving on to my forwards. My first forward is Jimmy Butler of the Miami Heat. Listen, the Miami Heat only made one significant move this offseason. One. That was to get Jimmy Butler down there. Yes, I know Whiteside got traded, but that wasn't significant. The only significant move they made was to get Jimmy Butler down to Miami. Jimmy Butler came there, turned that culture around. Because they was considered, a losing franchise. It's been a while since they've been really in the winning column. He goes down there. He instilled confidence in that team. He shows his leadership, and now that team is booming. And you're going to see why when I get to my center position, why I feel that way. Now, and my next forward is Jason Tatum. Now, I would say this. Jason Tatum, I've been high on him. I think he will be in the running for most improved player this year. He made his first All-Star game this year. So I think when he made that All-Star game, that boosted up his confidence. We seen the game where Boston played the Lakers that Sunday showcase, and we see Jason Tatum out there talking that talk and walking that walk and said, come holler at your boy. I'm open all day and twice on Sunday. With that said, let's roll into my center position. One, Bam Adebayo, also a first-time All-Star. And I'm going to tell you this, all right? I'm going to drop a little little sauce on this. When I was talking about Jimmy Butler came down there and instilled confidence in the Miami Heat, Adebayo was one of those guys that benefited from that confidence the most. This guy came out of nowhere. I think, honestly, my last two guys there, Jason Tatum and Bam Adebayo, they're probably going to wrestle for most improved player this year because they both took large jumps and they both was first-time All-Stars this year. and they both deserve it. So listen, this is my 5. All right, Chris Paul, Trae Young, Jimmy Butler, Jason Tatum, and Bam Adebayo. Over to you, Jay.
Yeah, moving to the third team. This is where it gets a little bit more muddled. We got some more differences, but hey, that's okay. I got 2 Celtics on this third team, and I'm giving some respect to Kemba Walker. I think one of the reasons we talk about Chris Paul is the intangibles. I think the same argument can be made for Kemba Walker. I think the effect he's had on that Celtic team is the complete opposite of what we saw with a guy named Kyrie Irving. You may have heard him, you may not have. Haven't heard from him too much this year, but hey, that's neither here nor there. But Kemba Walker's deserving to be on this team. He's had a really good year. Another All-Star game starter. So I like what he's done this year, and I think he's well deserved to be in this range. I think third team is about right for him. Uh, to continue to reward the tradition of winning, let's look at the Utah Jazz for just a quick moment, and let's look at Donovan Mitchell, who's been for 3 years. He's been putting up great numbers, and he's been the clear best player on the Utah Jazz. Averaging 24 points a game. That's good for 14th in the league. Fairly efficient. Gives you a fair amount of rebounds and assists. But he's had a great year, and I think this is about right for him. And then I think you're right on it with these forwards. Jimmy Butler. This is a guy that's 12th in player efficiency rating, so he's performing at a very, very high level. 20.6 rebounds, about 7 assists, just does it all for this team. And then you factor in the level of defense he plays. And this is another guy when you talk about intangibles, and I think the overall effect that he's had on that team is something that we look at. It's just remarkable. It was just a season ago that this was the third option on the Philadelphia 76ers. He goes to Miami, and they're hot. They're right there in the thick of it in the 4th seed. And the 76ers, for whatever reason, they just look lost, particularly on the road. So a great credit to Jimmy Butler. And in retrospect, I think you could make a great argument, at least from what I've laid out for you in the first and second team. I think you can make a good argument that he could go. I could elevate him to the second team above Siakam. But I'm going to stick with this. And hey, Jason Tatum, this is a guy who, and that game you mentioned, again, you right on the money. That was kind of a microcosm of what we've seen in the second half post the All-Star break, where he's elevated his level of play. And again, I always talk about the B to B plus guys. They got 4 of them. When you get a guy like Jason Tatum who can elevate his game to this type of level, I mean, it puts your team in a whole different other conversation and actually gives you legitimate championship aspirations. It's a shame that the season got suspended because what he was doing was something it was incredibly remarkable, and it would have been interesting to see if he could have sustained that into the playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see if and when the season gets back underway, how that looks in the playoffs. But the Celtics are definitely worth watching when we get to that point. And in the center position, Joel Embiid, he's got to be on there. I get it. I talk about intangibles. This is a guy that it doesn't appear that he has that down. Durability remains a concern. There's just too much extracurricular when it comes to Joel Embiid. But from a production standpoint, and when you consider the center position as a whole, that there's really not a whole lot of elite guys. And then again, and with the evolution of the NBA, we don't see a lot of teams playing the center at all. But Embiid, giving you 23 points, 12 rebounds, and just clearly the best player on that team. And from a pure talent perspective, I've said this on multiple occasions. I think he's a top 5 talent in this league, but it just remains a work in progress for him to put that all together. But he's still deserving of third team. So to recap it, Kemba Walker, Donovan Mitchell at the guards, Jimmy Butler, Jason Tatum at the forwards, and Joel Embiid is your third team center.
Yeah, I get different just a little bit on the guards here. I do have Lillard as one of my third team guards, and also have Bradley Beal. Give a little love to him. He's been really sweating it out with Washington, and a team in a game where he could just easily mail it in. He's trying to get buckets every night, and he's willed them to some victories they probably shouldn't have won. My forwards, I agree with y'all with Tatum and Butler. No arguments here. Y'all said need to be said about Jimmy Butler, and hey man, Jason Tatum is becoming a superstar right before our eyes. So big shout out to him. And yeah, like you said, it's really disappointing that we may not be able to see him anymore this year, but let's hope we do. And then Embiid, a first-team talent, that goes to second team for me with his off court antics and whatnot, and then it goes to third team when you factor in the durability and the fact that he just has games where he just doesn't show up and doesn't score a single point and like nothing happened, and then he'll come out and put up 30 and 15 the next night like nothing happened. So I want to see more consistency, and I want to see him cut the crap off the court, and he'd be on the first team. So until then, well, he's on the third, but he's got to be on at least one of the list.